Hey guys, welcome back to the Garage Built. Today we are back working on my 1966 Ford LTD, getting it ready for power tour. In this episode, we're finally going to get around to putting this engine bay back together, as you see, along with adding a couple little goodies in the interior. So the general layout of this video is going to be kind of like this. The actual engine portion of this is one of the last things I get around to finally doing. What we're going to do is start out by installing a small fuse panel and then put that little board of switches that I made into the dash. Into that, we'll eventually go and wire in our little Bluetooth radio setup, and we'll hook that up to my two speakers in the back. And then as we get into here and wire this into the battery in this circuit here, that's when we really find the need to get this all back together. So I guess let's get to it, and we'll start by doing that little fuse box. So here's where we are at right now. I've got my auxiliary fuse box mounted up top here on a support piece for my brake pedal, actually. These back four are ignition, so they'll come on when the key is on. These three here, two of them I've got pulled out right now, are constant hot. And this little purple one is the fuse to turn on those back four. It's for the relay system. So the four keyed ones, I've got them kind of routed right now. One of them is going to be my little radio that's going to mount here next to my gauges. One, this blue wire, is going to be my CB radio, and then two of them I've got routed through a hole in the firewall out into the engine compartment. One will be for the fan, one will be for the line lock, and then I've got one constant hot in, that'll be the purple wire that I've got routed through the dash, and it pops out here, and eventually I'll wire it in, but that'll be for the little cigarette lighter, so we'll be able to charge our phones. So, step one for the night. There's no more wires hanging. I tightened everything up. I got some vinyl wrap here. This is that dry stuff with no adhesive on it. I wrapped it starting there and then went up in the dash so it's hidden, and then it pops out on the back side of the panel there, and then it goes into these back four. This one is still blank. I have it grounded just because it was easy while I was doing like a common ground and everything. It just hops from one to one and then into the dash. These four are all keyed ignition wires, and then that is, I gotta put the nut on it still, but it's right there. That'll go on the stud right there in the back. So I just got done making this second panel and getting it installed. It's not wired in yet, just the actual unit itself in place with the gauges mounted, or the dials mounted to the front. So this is a small amplifier that I purchased, volume, treble, and bass. There's a hole drilled here for an aux cord mount that'll go through the back, and this has a plug for it here. So I'll wire this in. It just takes a 12 volt positive with a ground. It's got two speaker ports in the back with aux and Bluetooth capabilities. So I'll wire the two wires out down the back, probably behind the kick panel, under the door, and then I got the one speaker right there, and the other one's out right now from when I was testing the unit, but that'll go right there. And I'll sneak it down behind that door panel, behind the seat, and the wires will go up to the two speakers in the back. So like I said, I got the fuse box in already. And I got the wire run to the switch. Now we're just gonna run the wire from the switch to the actual unit itself, and we'll be able to test it out in car. I think it's really messy right now, based on my pile of stuff here and here from when I was doing these installations, and nothing's painted yet, so they're a little obvious right now, but this is roughly what it'll look like when you get in. switches will obviously be blacked out, the two of them, so they'll be less silver, I guess is the word. Your feet really don't hit them. They're really out of the way. It would take a lot to really come up and kick one of these. My knee is up here for this one and up here for this one. Be an awkward position to be able to do that. Even if you're shorter and you have the seat forward, it'd be really tough for that to be in your wheelhouse. So I'm not too worried about that part. Next night, we got the plug installed. DC 12 to 24 volts. Obviously, this is 12 plug. This is removable, so I can pull it out as needed. Ground wire goes right to the screw that holds the plate in place. Hot wire goes over to switch number 3. Turn this on. So now all I have to do here to get it to work is wire the speakers in and then hook the battery back up, and then obviously hook the switchboard up to the battery, which is one of the next things I'll do. I also just installed my line lock, so I just attached it to the fender. This was really the only good spot I had to install it. Up on the firewall there was a couple of spots, but it was kind of tough, get a little crowded over there, and I was worried about getting the brake lines all the way up there, then all the way back, and that being kind of an eyesore. So this isn't the prettiest thing itself, but it works, and it's all kind of condensed and consolidated. I also have it wired in, so I utilize an existing ground on the firewall, and then this goes into the small hole in the firewall down there with all the other wires. So now, like I said, we just have to hook up the main wire to the battery, and that'll activate everything over there. I wanted to be able to hook up my circuit panel and switchboards, so I had to kind of clear out this area here. So I had to mount my alternator back on, so that's in place now. I still gotta put the belts on, obviously, and get the main fan pulley on. That'll come later. But I did go and start getting this stuff wired in. So I got my 50 amp wire, which I wrapped in black so you wouldn't see it, which comes down and then under the fender here, and it pops out underneath here. I don't know if you noticed before, I had a couple wires that ran along the fender here that went to my ignition relay here. So I moved those back under the fender with the other big wire. So that's all out of the way now, and that'll clean up this side here a little bit. So regardless, the big wire comes in here and it goes into this 50 amp circuit breaker, and then it jumps into the starter relay. Or I guess it goes technically the other way, from relay to breaker to the panel under the dash. Regardless, that's wired in now. This is loose because I'm going to probably wire in the fan while I'm here. I have to put in another relay somewhere, probably up in this business somewhere. I'm not sure where yet. So while this is loose, I'll probably throw that relay in over here somewhere and at least get the wire run to where the fan's going to sit, and then that'll be ready to go in when it's time. So a lot of stuff just happened between that clip and this clip. I wanted to go in and mount my electric fan, but to do that I needed the radiator in to mount to that. I couldn't put the radiator in until the fan was in, which couldn't go on until the power steering pump was on, etc. So basically at this point the whole engine is back together, radiator is back in, and I just wrapped up installing my little electric fan. I don't know how well you can see it down in there. It's basically there, and I got the wire out here. It runs into a plug that is tucked up underneath. That way if I ever have to pull the radiator out, I don't have to cut any wires and rewire everything, so make it a little bit easier. And then, like I just mentioned, that'll come up and it goes into a relay right here, which is wired into this blue wire, which is all tied into the same harness that wraps around. So that's all back together. I mentioned in my little update video that this radiator got tested. It came back all good, so no worries there. It is now full of coolant. I just topped it off right before filming. And I also just wrapped up a quick oil change. Like I mentioned in a couple videos ago, when I pulled the intake off, a bunch of water fell down into the lower end of this thing. So clean that out. This is pretty much ready to start now. So we'll go through a couple other things. Inside here, this is also pretty much done. So it looks very similar to last time in terms of everything here. The only difference is now it's all wired up and it works. So like I showed you before, the plug goes in the back here, but I also have two speaker wires going into the back here to the two channels, one for each speaker. Those go up, out, over to the kick panel over here, up top. They go down and underneath, and then they go underneath the door here. There's usually a scuff plate in here to cover it up, but there's one and there's the other one. I wired it such that blue was positive and the brownish was negative, ground. So that's there, that goes underneath, all the way back. I ended up pulling the rear interior quarter panel off. Wire goes up underneath, clear of the window track, and then it pops up, goes through. And then I got the one speaker in there, the other one there. And those are wired in now and they work. So the way this works now is I come in here, obviously the switches all run off accessory. So I come in and I can either turn my key on or go to the accessory side. And then down here, my third switch is my radio. Over here, it just beeps, so it's on, and then it's just connected now. I have a volume, a bass, and a treble, and I'll turn it up a little bit. And then I've got some royalty-free music loaded, so I shouldn't get copyrighted, but I should be able to just hit play. And it works just fine. Shut it off like that. Yeah, so that works awesome. And then the last piece of the puzzle was I got a new cigarette lighter to work, and I wired that in. So there's all the wire that goes in underneath and then to my little fuse panel. This one is constant hot, so even with the key off, I can leave my phone in here, charge it, and ultimately drain my car battery. But I suppose I'll have a charged phone, so I can always call for help. But yeah, I think the next step in here is to pull these two panels back out and paint them, and then we'll get them final installed. Yeah. All right. So I just came out here. I had my brother come down and give me a hand. We jacked the car up and bled the brakes. So we got all the air out of the system from putting in the line lock. So that's good to go. While it was up in the, actually, once I put it back down on the ground, I took a few minutes and just cleaned everything up in the engine bay. Not so much the air cleaner, but the actual fenders themselves, and then parts of the firewall and stuff in the back. Just because this was getting really dirty from sitting. This had some scuffs on it from the wires that were run there. And then that fender had gotten really dull from spilling some fuel on it a while ago. So we gave everything a good wipe down and a good polish, and we're pretty much back to where we were when I put this together the first time. So nice and fresh, looking good still. I think we're gonna wrap it up here for tonight. This is pretty much ready to fire. Like I said, I just noticed a few minutes ago that I forgot to hook up my throttle cable, so I have to bring this down, set it in place. That'll be that's my throttle on top, I think, or the bottom's throttle, top is kick down. So throw that on and we'll test fire it and see how it runs, and then we're good to go. Another little thing I did last night that I'll clue you in on is I ordered a new third member that'll be here in about 6 weeks. This has 280 gears with an open diff. I ordered 325s with an Eaton True Track limited slip type setup. So that, like I said, should be here in about 6 weeks, and we'll throw that in. When that's up in the air, we'll also do the 2 mufflers in the back, and then that'll be done. So in the meantime, probably off camera, I will put my throttle cable back on, and I'll get my interior back together and paint those 2 dash panels. And then maybe before, maybe not, I'll get this thing to fire and set the timing and whatnot. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Feel free to leave a comment down below, like, subscribe. You know the deal. Thank you very much.